A very good evening and welcome to all participants to the fourth academic session of the second part of the Global Tipping Point Summit. The first part was on education. It began on the 20th of November and went on up to 13th December. This particular summit is called Rethinking Parenting, and we have had a heartening response from parents and educators. A lot of parents attended the Education Summit, and now we have a lot of educators attending the Parent Summit. And this was exactly our intention. We are hoping to get parents and educators on the same page. So welcome again. I am the founder director of the GTPS Summit, Dr. Kumi Bevaina. I retired in 2016 as a head of the Department of English, University of Mumbai. I'm a creative writer, literary critic of repute. I've conducted numerous workshops all over the globe. And importantly, I'm a storyteller. So this particular summit is different from the kind of normal conferences that we attend. And we wanted to make the themes also highly relevant. So I requested Ruchita Darsha, the CEO of First Moms Club, to do a kind of survey. I had a lot of themes in my mind, and based on the needs of the parents, we identified the speakers. The first speaker at the academic summit was Father Joe Pereira, who talked about a social problem which is growing graver by the day, addictions. The second was on teaching compassion to children. Again, a very important session led by Mr. Bittu Saigal, who is known internationally as one of the best conservationists. The third session that we had yesterday was directed by Suzanne Rodrigues from the UAE, and that was on nurturing creativity in children. And today we have an extremely important session conducted by none other than the principal of Gateway School, Varsha Makhija. Varsha, I'm delighted to have you and your team members here today. Next week, we continue and we have a very important session led by the expert on parenting from Singapore, Mr. Jim Lee Tek Hui, and that is on cyber wellness, how we can maintain healthy relationships even in cyberspace. We have Mr. Shradhalu Ranade, a scientist from the Aurobindo Ashram, who's going to address us and talk to us about integral parenting. And next week, we have a very special guest speaker, Father Godfrey Disa, who's going to address an important issue, anxiety and depression during and post-COVID. The last week of the summit will be handled by Ms. Mahera Desai. Mahera is one of the leading counselors in the Joslok Hospital today. She will be talking about the scars of shaming. And finally, Mr. Mark McLeod, who will be discussing how children can be sensitized to social justice issues at a very early age. The structure of the summit, the concept of the summit is entirely different. And let me acquaint you with that, because that is the essence of the Global Tipping Point Summit. I will illustrate that with this diagram. At the core is the speaker. And the speaker speaks for about 20 minutes. Over several months, 4 change facilitators, but happily in this group we had 8. These people who are marked here in blue have been liaising with the speaker and deciding on a very interesting, actionable action project. What we do at these meetings is that we present the ideas. The change facilitators come and say which particular area they will be providing training in, and then we throw it open to the online audience to fill in Google Forms and sign up as action group members. We hope to take about 10 people as action group members. The change facilitators will be providing them with intense training over 12 hours. Each facilitator will be doing 3 hours, 4 change facilitators, 12 hours. Once the action group members finish the training with the change facilitators, they go out into the world, create their own groups, and implement the new ideas. At the end of the year, they will present an impact report, and that is where the first part of GTPS will end. We hope to have GTPS as an annual event. So each time, every year, GTPS will be an intellectual fest, just as a Kala Ghoda is a cultural fest. So we invite you to stay with us. A conference, a summit of this magnitude cannot possibly be handled alone. And I have had 108 people working with me tirelessly since March 2019. The whole idea was to have it initially as a physical summit, but then COVID happened, and now we have it as an online summit. In a way, that's a good thing because we've been able to reach out to many more. We've had 3,000 people participating at the Education Summit. So I'll begin by thanking my advisory group. My advisory group members comprise Dr. Firoza Godrej, Mr. Norshir Kurodi, Mr. Norshir Dadrala, Mr. Sanjay Rastogi of Tata Trent, Dr. Shehnaz Kama, Mr. Yazdi Tantra, Ms. Devika Chatterjee, Ms. Rakhi Chabria, and Ms. Fiona Reynolds. We also have a very strong core committee, and the most important member there is Ms. Donna Reen, the summit coordinator. Donna has been working with me tirelessly over months. Any time is good enough for her, and she has lent me huge support. Thank you very much, Donna. The core committee also comprises Mr. Yazdi Tantra, Ms. Deepa Soman, Mr. Milind Soman, Mr. Glenn Concessio, and Mr. Bhavin Shah. For the summit, we have partnered with Tata Trend, Tantra Tech, K-Merck, Lumiere Business Solutions, Education World, Parent World, Penn Ultimate, Teachers Help Teachers, First Moms Club, and Wolves. The video you saw at the beginning of the program today was created by Wolves. We also have been extremely fortunate to receive support from luminaries like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. A day before the Education Summit began, we received this letter from Dalai Lama. I'll just read the first paragraph of the letter to you. I am pleased to know about the Global Tipping Point Summit and its focus on improving the present education system so that our younger generation can have more responsible citizens of the planet. The founder of the Isha Foundation, Sadhguru, has also supported us. From the Sadhguru team, we received this message. We are touched by the Global Tipping Point Summit's initiative to empower the youth to be well equipped during these challenging times, and we are happy to share some quotes from Sadhguru to be part of it. We have also received support letters from Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, recipient of 5 Presidential Distinguished Service Awards, and Mr. Kersi Chowda, who is known as one of the leading psychiatrists in India today. Mr. Shamak Dava, internationally acclaimed choreographer, singer, performer, entertainment director, has also done his bit to promote the GTPS Summit, as has Shri M, spiritual guide, social reformer, educationist, and Padma Bhushan awardee. We've also received support from some media people, Cyrus, Baman, and Rageshwari. Cyrus did a wonderful podcast with me, and so did Mr. Baman Irani. Cyrus is known to the world as a TV anchor, theater personality, comedian, podcaster, and author. And Baman Irani as theater and film actor, voice artist, and photographer. Rageshwari Lumba Swarup also supported us. Rageshwari is a motivational speaker, actor, singer, and author. We also have a very strong team, a design team comprising Rhea Soman, Disha Upreti, Jahnavi Kulkarni, and Rohan Signika. Our technical team, Pezan Charna, Ashish Kadam, Disha Poddar, and Neha Vatsala, who has done our social media work. And our organizing committee, comprising Mr. Shahrukh Vevaina, Dr. Nina Nair, Shalanta Mascarenas, Valerie Mendonça, Nagma Sheikh, Mustaq Sheikh, Madhu Nair, Gautami Ambiye, and Dipti Mazumdar. As I said, these are only a few out of the 108 people who've been supporting us. So thanks to each and every one. And with this, I hand over the session to Ms. Raki Chabria, CEO of Teachers Help Teachers. Raki and I have known each other for long. We've worked together, and I'm happy to have her as an anchor today. Over to you, Raki.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumi. And I'm really excited to be about a part of this summit and being able to anchor today's session on parenting a differently abled child. Being an early educator and a special educator by profession, I'm truly passionate about education. I'm also a mother to two boys, and that's all the more reason for me to be a part of the parenting summit. I'm also passionate about building communities and raising awareness amongst educators as well as parents too, so as to bring about a change in the mindset. So we at Teachers Help Teachers, which is a social impact enterprise, we provide curated content along with courses for educators and parents. We have a Facebook community of more than 12,000 educators across India, where we collaborate and learn from one another. And it is indeed heartwarming to see how educators in the community are helping each other seek ideas, suggestions, and constantly answering each other's queries on the group. So that's something that goes on throughout the day, and loads and loads of educators who are a part of the community are benefiting from the same. In fact, we are in the process of launching our own academy where we will be providing content and courses for educators and parents, so as to bring about a change in the mindset and our attitudes, because I believe that that is what is required to move forward, and also to be able to be more accepting uh, towards children with different needs. And being a special educator and having done my thesis on autism, what I have experienced is that disability does not really affect the person as much as it affects the people who are close to them, because it's the people who are close to them actually can't see their struggles, and that's what makes them feel disabled rather than the person who is actually having different needs. So I'm happy to introduce our today's speaker, Ms. Varsha Makhija, who is a practicing clinical psychologist for the last 15 years. She is also the member and the co-principal of the Gateway School of Mumbai, a school for children with learning challenges. Her responsibilities include working with students, teachers, and parents towards emotional well-being and developing a growth mindset. She conducts one to one and group sessions in creating and maintaining a healthy mental and emotional lifestyle. She's on the advisory board of two non-profit organizations and plays a pivotal role in helping them set up better practices and policies. So we welcome Varsha Makhija, and we look forward to hearing as to how is it that parents can handle uh, children with different needs, because that is something that is the most difficult task to achieve. Over to you, Varsha.
Thank you, Raki. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. I'm very, very humbled to be here. It's a huge privilege to be here. I know Kumi talking to me about this last year in March, and I'm like, we've just hit COVID. I don't know where are we going with this. Are you sure you want to do the summit? But Kumi always surprises me with her enthusiasm and just with her never say die attitude. She was pretty sure we're going to do this, and I'm so, so glad that today, 8 months down the line, we have a summit that we can do online, and there are so many people who could benefit from that. So thank you so much. A special thank you to Donna, who's been helping us coordinate and just helping us with all the logistics, and for all the 108 people who've made sure that this is possible. Thank you very, very much. So my team and I today will be talking to you about different roles that we play. Why have we come? I know you've been maybe a little surprised at why do we have 8 change facilitators. And I'll come to that in the next at the end of the workshop. But today what we're going to focus on, because this is a parenting summit, today we're going to be talking about parents mainly. So let's talk about this. I might use different terms while we're sharing about our journey and our relationship with working with kids. You can call it whatever you want. Just for this title, we've called it differently able children, but you can call it neurodiverse children. You can call it children with difficulties, whatever suits you. So just before going ahead, I would just like to once share my screen and just let me know if that works fine. Is that okay? Can everyone see it? Can someone?
Yes, Varsha, absolutely good.
All right. So thank you, Kumi. So our topic for today is it takes a village to raise a differently able child. And we're doing this from the Gateway School of Mumbai along with the Global Tipping Summit, Point Summit. And later on, our change facilitators will be talking to you about parent-school partnership. My first part of today's workshop is going to focus a lot on just parents and their journey ahead. If you feel like you have any questions, feel free to write it in the chat. And maybe at some point we can have a session where we will be addressing your questions, but I might request you to do an activity. So just bear with me as we keep going ahead. So our first thing is about dream. The first slide. So my slides are going to be a lot more simple, and then I will share a little bit more about it. When parents know that they're going to have a child, a lot of dreams start. How is this going to be perfect? How are we going to be perfect parents? How are our children going to be perfect? Much before we start visiting the doctors, we come back home, there's already a lot about which room will be given to the child, how will the child's room look, what are some of the adjustments that we possibly would want to make, which school would my child be? A lot of schools ask you to register right before even the child is born. So which school will my child go to? The expectations start. What classes will I put them into? What would my life look like? What adjustments do I need to make? How is it that I could go ahead? What is it that would change for me in the next 9 months? The planning starts right from the beginning. And then the child is born. And sometimes there might be some prenatal complications, and sometimes we might not have any complications. And then sometimes during that whole journey ahead, there might be a sense of confusion. What really is going on over here? Do I sometimes notice that something is different about my child? Sometimes in some of our students, in some of our kids, we can see that something is different when they're not able to achieve their milestones. Sometimes even with children with learning difficulties, everything looks perfect right in the beginning. There's a tick mark for all our milestones. But as we keep going ahead, maybe at some point, some of the tick marks are not checked. And that's the time that we really start asking ourselves, what is really going on? There is confusion. We're not very sure because there is a range between where your milestones can be achieved. And sometimes we do start asking ourselves this question about, is this okay? Where are we going with this? Do I need to do something? Or do I just need to wait? The next question that starts coming up in our minds as parents very often is guilt. When I start noticing, and I hear this a lot from a lot of parents that I normally meet, what really went wrong? Is there something I have noticed that there is something different about my child? Did I do something right? It's almost impossible to assume that something somewhere has gone wrong, but it's almost impossible to assume and ask ourselves, who could possibly have done something wrong? And there starts the guilt. What is it that I did? Did I eat something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Did I not take my vitamins? Did I not take the injections? Do you think it was possibly the eclipse? How is it that this one was fine? What is it that I could not do? Was it my husband? Was it me? Sometimes husbands wonder, is it their wives? There's just, again, a lot of merging of confusion and a lot of guilt about what really comes in. But at this time, somewhere, some amount of the reality starts hitting in. And then we move to a part of fear. Sorry. Give me a second. And then we move to fear. Should I voice this? Should I tell someone about this? Is something about this going to change? If I tell someone, will this make it real? Do I need to go to an expert? Should I even share this with my partner? Should I share this with my husband? How long will this last? Suddenly, you start moving from the place that I want to start telling people because maybe I then can get the help that I need. Where should I go? Whom should I meet next? What is it that I should do? Also, at some point, as parents, there will always be hope, and it's actually a good thing. Very often, we move to this place where we tell ourselves, is this going to be something that will never be cured? Is this something that will continue going on for a very long period of time? Will one day this be fixed? There are loads of questions, but we don't really know where to go or whom to ask. And then at some point, we start talking about it. Even though the most scary part, which a lot of parents will tell you, is the fact that when they have to go to an expert, but they will eventually know that they have to go to an expert because that's the person who will be able to guide them, tell them what is working, what is not working, and what possibly is going on. I have heard this several times that before they have to go to an expert, they've had sleepless nights. They've hoped that the appointment gets cancelled. Very often, they also wish in their mind, while they might be thinking or imagining things, the doctor's going to reassure them and possibly tell them nothing is wrong with your child. This is just absolutely in the so called normal bracket. And what do we do about that? But at that time, when they go to the experts, what does testing look like in India in a big way? They do a few testings, they ask you to do a few tests, they observe your child, and then they give you a diagnosis very, very often. Very often, parents are not okay with the first diagnosis because that's when the reality starts hitting. Is this really something that I need to go through? Why is this happening to me? Maybe this doctor has been in a hurry. Very often, I hear parents telling me, this doctor just took 15 minutes with my child. Was that enough time for them to realize? What is it that I need to do next to really understand and do what is best for my child? And then is when the whole understanding starts sinking in at some point. You know that you have to do something, but where do I start? Grief is an emotion that hits us in waves. Very often we move from a place where we suddenly start grieving. Parents very often share their experience of the fact and the time that they don't even know what they're feeling anymore. Are they feeling numb at some point? Is it something that they don't know what's happening? Do they start moaning about dreams that they possibly could have had? Some parents also very often use this word called chronic sadness. A lot of people are giving them advice at different times, but they do not even sometimes know whom should they go to, what should they look at, what should they do next. And grief, fortunately or unfortunately, hits us in waves. Sometimes we feel like we've just dealt with it. Very often, when parents are just getting the diagnosis, they share that, we dealt with it and we moved ahead. But this again hit us. This hit us possibly when the next milestone had to be achieved. This possibly hit us again when we had to go ahead and we had to talk about and we had to think about schooling. This happened when maybe the sibling, we had to explain this to the sibling or to the extended family. So it starts hitting us in waves, and we start at some point start feeling, will I ever be happy again? I'm going to just leave my screen on for a minute, and I just want you to read this. This is by Emily Kingsley, a lady herself who has a child with Down syndrome, had a child, and she had written this poetry. I'm just going to leave it here and then speak about it. A lot of times If you have been in the field of special education, or if you have spoken to any therapist, or you have a child with difficulties, this is probably something that you must have read at different times. The story is basically that you maybe would have wanted to go to Italy, but you landed up going in Holland. I meet a lot of different parents, and they have two things that they come back with. There's never an in between. One kind of parents love this. They look at it as a time that possibly they could be inspired, possibly there could be a time that they could change, possibly this is really a time where they have to raise above what they're feeling, and there's a deep sense of acceptance. But there are a lot of parents who will also honestly and intimately share with you that they actually get extremely angry when they read this. Nobody had signed up to have a child with special needs. They don't want to feel special at that time. They don't want their child to feel special at that time. They are not ready to go to Holland. They want to go to Italy. And that's absolutely okay. The reason for me to share this here is that no matter who tells you you need to feel a certain way, it's okay for parents or anybody to feel exactly what you want and for how long do you want. Unfortunately, one more thing that parents with special needs will tell you, that they don't always feel like they have too much time. When they start understanding that something is different about their child, they immediately need to start sharing and talking about different interventions. And that's the time that we start moving from a journey from denial to acceptance. Do we even have enough time to grieve? Now I know that my child will need special support, might need different support. What is it that I'm able to do? Whom should I see first? Should I even see another doctor? Should I go and see another therapist? What should I really do? How many people in my family should I talk to about? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to accept this? Where is it and what is it that I am feeling right now? What is it that my child is feeling right now? And how long will it take me to fill the gap between where the child is right now to where the child needs to be? At this point, I would just stop for a second and I will request everyone, and especially there are parents in the audience or different therapists or people who are just hearing this. There is a gentleman by the name of Mark Brackett, someone who I admire a lot. He is the director at the Yale Center of Intelligence, and he talks a lot about permission to feel. For the next 1 minute or 2 minutes, if people can share, if you can really put in the chat, what is it that you think you experience or possibly a parent would experience when they are for their journey? This is your time to feel. So use the chat for that. And I'll just keep reading it out as we keep going ahead. You can share a word that maybe I've missed out. You can share your experience, but use I'm giving you the permission at this time to feel what you would like to. Guilt, celebration, guilty, disappointment. If you would like to write more than a few words, it's also absolutely okay. Purpose, shame, victimized, all very powerful words. Stress and confusion, sacrifice, intense anguish and deep sense of helplessness, uncomfortable, fear. Why me? Beautiful. Thank you everyone for sharing so honestly. If you still have anything to share, please put your words here. Helplessness, shame and fear, overwhelmed, dejection, a whole lot of new meaning to life, mixed feelings and resent and sacrifice, stagnated, will my life stop? Lovely. Fear. Okay. So it could be different for different people, and that's absolutely okay. Very important questions. What next? Trying to understand, satisfied. Okay. Celebration that you get through going through the whole journey of confusion, guilt, anger, shame, acceptance, and then celebration. Anxious of the future of your child. Amazing to have a child with Down syndrome. I support other parents. Beautiful. Thank you everyone for sharing. Worry. I think we could stop now and you can keep adding words in the chat, but I will just go ahead. I'm just going to read the last few that are up there. Devotion and support, trying to find a meaning, God's gift. Who will look after him or her when I die? And we'll be addressing that today as well. Some very, very important and some very important sharings and some extremely powerful words that you all have shared. No matter what you share, it's absolutely okay. No matter what you feel, it's absolutely okay. And also, one thing to keep in mind is that no matter for how you feel this, it's absolutely okay. So, after these feelings, what do we do? How do we really go ahead, and what is it that we can do next? And that's the time that we work towards building. Sorry, I think there's something with my screen. And that's the time that we focus on building the village. What does the village seem like? There's an old African proverb which says, it takes a village to raise a kid. It definitely may or may not be so in 2020, but it definitely takes a village to raise a differently able kid. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to talk about different elements, and as and when we keep talking about, I would encourage you to keep using the chat and sharing your experiences. Never underestimate what you are sharing and how that might inspire someone, because different people are at different levels on the line. So someone might have just accepted it, someone might not be there, someone might need a little courage. So whatever makes sense for you, please keep adding it in the chat. The couple. When a family, when the parents start understanding that their child is going through different, the child might is differently able, might need different support, what does it really look like? Parenting anyway is tough. Parenting a child with disabilities is a whole different story. Sometimes you want to be on the same team, but you're just experiencing so much anguish, so much anger, so much confusion. And very often, there's a lot of statistics, but I didn't want to add that here. There's a lot of statistics which talks about how couples that have children with disabilities very often also divorce, go through separation, and have a lot of, and sometimes even their marriages break. Now, I've not added that here because we don't really have Indian statistics on that. I'm not saying that otherwise families don't separate. But the battle among a couple, the feelings that they are going through is real, because each one of them at some point goes through that journey, and they might be at a very different level and might be at a very different position. Sometimes somebody accepts it faster, someone sometimes takes longer. It's absolutely okay. What can we do to make this better? Acknowledge first about where you are feeling. Listen to your partner, and it's absolutely okay to acknowledge and accept where they are. As much as possible, try not using the blame game. It's never about one parent. So many times, so many disabilities can't even be explained about why, when did that happen. So when that starts happening, when you take away the blame game, it helps work together. It helps us to work together as a team. Share responsibilities. Sometimes one parent takes the lead. What happens after a few years is very often that parent lands up feeling like their was paused, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, or they feel like they had to handle everything else. So from time to time, it's absolutely okay to keep revisiting, talk about who will handle different responsibilities. The trick here is if one partner is doing something, then you let them take the lead on it. For example, if one parent is in charge for the education part, let them take the main lead on it, but consult with each other. When we are always giving instructions, the other one might not be very open to take up more responsibility. The next question, the other child. Very often we have siblings, and I have been doing this for the last 15 years, and I talk a lot to siblings of kids who have different difficulties. Mostly, in my experience, they're always extremely open to listening. They want to listen, they want to help. But sometimes what we might forget is that they're also a child and they go through their own journey. A very common question that siblings very often ask me is, but is this my fault? Am I supposed to be responsible? Am I never allowed to be a child? Am I not the one who's going to be able to live my childhood? Because almost every time something that this child might do, some of them are very understanding, take on the role, are able to do that. Sometimes some of them want their space. Sometimes some of them don't want the one who wants to be taking up all the responsibility. Sometimes they are not complimented. Sometimes they are not acknowledged, sometimes they're not looked after. There can be a lot of things that might happen. What really works is to explain to them at different ages what really is the diagnosis of their sibling and what is really expected from them. Remember, this other person that you are talking to, the other child, is also a child himself or herself, and they are going through their own journey. So allow them to play, allow them to have choices, ask them how much would they like to take on responsibility. Kids don't always like to take responsibility. I know as a family we would like them to, but sometimes if they're not okay to, because they are going through some pressure, it's absolutely okay. Also, very often remember to share the successes of the other child. And as much as possible, while a lot of your time and energy might go to spend, you might be spending a lot of time and energy with the child who has difficulties. Also, remember the other child also needs you. There are also support groups for children, for siblings. Omid runs a center, a support group. I know a lot of other centers that also run. Sometimes let them go in and talk to other children openly as well. The point is to let them share as openly as possible. The immediate family, how much do I tell them? Who can tell them? Who can share? Will a woman tell her family? Will the husband tell his family? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to get an expert on? Sometimes who can share more responsibilities? When we go to specialists and we go to educators, a lot of people are giving us a lot of instructions. Eat this diet, do not eat this diet, add this time, don't add this time, keep this as a boundary, do not keep that as a boundary. And very often there is no family life. Remember, the more people you share it with and the more people you get on board, they would like to help. Most possibly, they would also want to do the right thing. When they don't know what to do, I've very often heard people saying, our grandparents don't get it. They think this is something that will go away with age. This is possibly something that would change. But I have spoken to a lot of grandparents myself, and I've realized that when you explain it to them in the way that they would understand, there is grief, there is sorrow, but the love of grandparents is very, very different. And most often, they will understand and make peace and want to help you with your journey ahead. Friends. Friends, very often with parents, you will hear, especially of children with difficulties, you will hear that their parents have friends who are mainly their kids' parents. Is that okay? It is okay. But also remember that you are also an individual. So have your own friend circle around you. Build your own community. See whom you would like to talk to and when would you like to talk to. Sometimes parents find it very tough to keep sharing this with a lot of people from time to time. They feel shame, they feel pain, they feel hurt. Sometimes some of the parents love to share it because they feel like then they have more people on board. Your journey is your journey, but have your friends close and at least have one or two people with whom you can depend on and you can have open conversations. And when you have those conversations, talk about your experience, but while you're also talking about your child's experience, also remember to talk about yourself. They're also your friends. This is one of my favorite words. This is something that I very often hear. Society. Log kya bolenge? What are people going to say? Who are these people? Sometimes people don't know, and we might have to educate them. I've very often seen parents talk about, when they've taken their child for maybe a play or a show or somewhere in a social situation, and something about the child could have been socially embarrassing in our so-called norms. And parents have not been okay about it because it's a lot about how people are looking at their child, accepting their child, moving ahead, passing comments. It's okay to sometimes stop and educate them. It's okay to make them aware. Sometimes they don't know, sometimes they might know, sometimes they might want to know. So at that given point of time, do what you think is best. But your child is as entitled as any other child is. So if somebody is not able to make the space to accommodate your child, make them aware. Most often, people have changed policies for children with difficulties when they have been aware about it. $1 billion question, the school. What kind of school would really work for my child? Should my child work? Should my child go in a mainstream school? Should my child go in an inclusive school? Maybe when they're around different experts or different people who are so different children who are so-called normal, will something change for them? Would my child need a special needs school? We are also the Gateway School of Mumbai is also special needs school. But sometimes we do not have the expertise to support all different difficulties. Then what? Then where should my child go? Schooling is 10 to 12 years of your child's life. It's very important at this time for both parents to be together and understand and ask yourselves, what is it that I would like from school? If you're putting your child into an inclusive setup, it's good to be in touch with the SEN department, that's a special needs department. A very important question to ask yourself and understand when you're choosing a school is, what is your goal for your child? Is it only socialization? Is it academics? Is it that you want them to have a sense where they belong? And also, most importantly, to understand what can the school possibly do and what are the school's restrictions. That possibly will help you to choose what is the best option. Now, for a lot of parents, just putting their child in school is enough, but we know with kids who are differently able, there is a different journey. You also do have outside therapists and educators working with your child. This could be a speech educator, your occupational therapist, maybe a counselor, there could be a special remedial teacher. And at this time, think about it as a triangle where the child is at the center. The parents know their child, then there is a school that works, and then there are outside therapists and educators together that work with the child. When we again start the blame game sometimes, and it doesn't come from a bad position, it just comes from a time of they are not doing their job, this is what we should be doing, this is what we're doing. The only person who lands up suffering is the child. If we keep the child at the center, it's extremely important for all of us to know that all of us who are working with the child makes a difference. And how can we support each other instead of blaming each other? I have been both in both positions. I have sometimes represented the school and I have sometimes represented being an outside therapist. And again, in my opinion, what matters is when there is no blame game, but there is a lot of explanation, there are expectations, and there is a very clear thought plan or your IP about what is it that each person has to do to play a role. Self is literally something that I've put at the end of today's talk. And why have I put this? Because with all that we've spoken about, this whole circus, this whole journey, this whole life, where is it that I, as an individual, as a parent, play a role? What is it that are my aspirations? What is it that I would really want? While you do land up playing a role as a parent, it's extremely important to remember that you're also an individual. What support would you need? Do you take some time off? What happens with your career? What is it that you would like to do? Sometimes would you need professional help? The help is not always for the child. Something that we do at Gateway and even otherwise that I find extremely helpful is having a strong support group. Our parents today are going to share a little bit more about that, but having a support group where it's a space for you to talk about yourself. Are you able to go for date nights with your spouse? Are you able to possibly go out and spend some time with the other child? Is it sometimes that you can just shut your door and not spend time with anyone and just do something that you like? This might seem like something very small, but the more and more you land up at least removing some time for yourself and understanding that you're important, you will be able to sustain a lot more. I know probably a lot of you might have this question, but when? There isn't enough time. When we learn to compartmentalize and give yourself time, when you fill your own cup, you're able to help and support others a lot better. Finances. Some of you shared this even in the group and even right now. Bringing up differently able children is a whole different economic stream. Some people can afford it, some people can't afford it. Beyond the schools, you will be educators, therapists, there will be extra classes. All of this is a lifelong process. In most other kids, we feel like at the age they're 16 or 18 or 24, they will be able to fend for themselves. That might not be the case for a lot of our students, for a lot of our kids. And then what do? How do we really work towards this? In your village, definitely have someone who supports you and understands and explains to you about how do you manage your finances. Because with other children, we sometimes might have to plan for 16 years or 18 years or 21 years. With children who are differently abled, we might have to think a lot more about, and there are about a longer time period. And there are lots of government schemes as well right now that supports with this. So the good thing to do is to educate yourself and advocate. The race. These are just 2 or 3 last pointers that I would like to cover up. While we're talking about this and we're talking about our journey, the trajectory for every child is very, very different. Be extremely wary of the catch-up game. Very often when the child is diagnosed, we try to compare it to the so-called norm. So a normal child at 4 years old might be doing this. Where is my child functioning? Is he functioning at 3.2, 3.3, 3.4? At 10 years old, this is what children should be doing. My child's not able to do that at 8. Is he at 7? The race very often will make you feel like you are losing out. And that's why the good thing to know is that every child has their own pace, and celebrate all the successes that they are able to experience from time to time. Even one child with different abilities might be very different from another child, so called even in the neurotypical children. I cannot stress enough on how important this is as a parent. Educate and advocate. There are lots of conspiracy theories outside there. There are lots of uninformed people. There are lots of people who will give you a lot of nushkas, things that you will end up doing that you think would help the child. As parents, you might be desperate to want to try all of that. Go to a tarot card leader, go to this person, go to that person, all respect to everyone else. But you are the one who knows what is best for your child. There is enough education out there to be able to understand how different disabilities work, what is their pattern, what is it that you can do to support. Also, advocate as much as possible. You know what is best for your child. So when different people are talking about it and you have a realistic approach and you're able to go ahead and understand what is it that I would like to do next, you will start finding this extremely powerful. You spend most amount of time with the child. So you know realistically what can your child do and what can your child not do. I work with some brilliant parents in school and outside, and I am always amazed with how they know it. And very often I ask them, how do you know it? Of course, they're extremely well read, they have a lot of knowledge, but they also use their gut very, very well. Make sure that the professionals that you're going to know their job. You will be paying them, you will be spending money. Know a little bit more about it, do your homework before you go and see them. Last two things is it does take a village to raise a child. The village will look different for every family. What happens is that sometimes in some people we might have two different people who are the family, the village. Sometimes they might be 10, sometimes they might be 15. How is it that we can best support the child? It is only when we share with them, we're transparent, and we understand at the end. Our goal is to celebrate that child in the best possible way that we can, understanding very well what are the limitations and what are the strengths. Celebrate the strengths as much as possible. Every child and every family looks different. You decide what your village looks like. And my last thing for today is to just leave you with one particular thought. As a community, what is our responsibility? Today on this chat, most of you have come in, you'll have removed an hour of your day on Sunday because somewhere there is a feeling that you would like to make a difference. Some of you might be parents, some of you might not be parents. I'm going to share with you what the proverb actually means. It's an African proverb. It takes a village to raise a child means when an entire community of people must interact with children for those children to experience and grow in a safe and healthy environment. What is it that is really our responsibility as people of the community? As they keep growing up, when they're younger, they need a different village. When they grow up, they need a different college. They need a different village. When they're in college or possibly doing another course, they might need a different village. We as a community, how inclusive are we? How open are we to understand that these children don't have to change to fit in? But as a community, how is it that we can change to adapt them? Thank you so much for the time. And thank you so much for allowing me to share this. I think Donna will be talking a little bit more about our change facilitators. Just before we go to that, something that I would like to tell you is our change facilitators in this group are mainly parents, and we do have some educators working with them. When you hear these parents, they're here to inspire you. These parents and educators are people I have worked with for years, and I'm extremely inspired by their thought process, by their never die attitude, and just their energy. So hopefully you will take back from them as much as I do. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Varsha. That was a highly comprehensive presentation. You packed in so much in the 20-25 minutes that were given to you.
Thank you.
And I think you might have been seeing some of the comments on the chat box. People have been extremely appreciative of your simple, highly effective, comprehensive, and very, very informative presentations. So thank you very much. It was
Thank
really
you, Kumar.
excellent.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that I have felt when I have engaged with parents of differently able children is that the immediate thought that comes to me is exactly what you said about Holland and Italy. You may have bargained for one, but you get something else. And that immediately puts you out of the egoic mode because you can't rest with your ego anymore. Everything is so different. So I have seen highly evolved people who are parents of differently able children. So perhaps there is some meaning in what happens and why the children are born that way. Extra chromosome here, less, whatever. But there is some meaning. And I think you and your team at Gateway, having observed you people, you're doing some admirable work. So, with that, I would now like to introduce the change facilitators who are working with Varsha. The action project is Parent School Partnership. And because this is the action project, we don't have this time a single facilitator. We have a dyad, two facilitators, one parent and one counselor. So let me begin by introducing each one of them in turn. Next slide, please. I would urge you, if this has touched you, moved you, interested you, please sign up for the action project by going to the website www.gtpsforchange.org and volunteer to become a change facilitator. You will be trained by the best people here, people who really understand and who work very effectively in quiet ways. The issue of self-care is going to be tackled by Archana. Archana talks of herself in this way. Being a mom of two kids who think differently has been a turning point in my life. And when it's time to recharge, laughs and fun times with my tribe of supportive moms, my workouts and my alone time is what I look forward to most. Tejal says of herself, with an array of passions ranging across classical music, history, and graphic design, raising a child with different needs enhanced my understanding of a purposeful life. I enjoy balancing my time between my home, my work, my hobbies, and my aspirations. The facilitators are going to work on one project, but different aspects of it. The second aspect is collaboration. Ujjwal Yadav says, I work as a counselor at Gateway School of Mumbai. I love reading books, and some days I enjoy being with myself while I indulge in nothing. This is the best thing that helps me relax. Sheetal says, I'm a chartered accountant by profession and by heart a special needs mum to a 15-year-old. After he came to me, my life pivoted into a different world with loads of learning, spiritual growth, and so many roller coaster rides, bringing their share of heartbreaks, joys, and victories. It is not something I chose, but I'm happy as it's turned out to be my best experience. Mandana Nambiar and Anita Patel are going to discuss building a support system. That is what they will provide training in. Manda says of herself, I'm a counselor at the Gateway School of Mumbai. I'm passionate about working with children to help them strengthen their social emotional skills. I enjoy practicing mindfulness by listening to music. Anita. Anita says, my child has been my greatest teacher. Our journey began with our neurodiverse child over a decade ago. It has never been easy, but it has been incredibly enriching. I keep growing, learning, and gaining strength through this extraordinary experience. And finally, we have Daya and Jayashree. Daya Chatani says, I'm a counselor at the Gateway School of Mumbai. I love traveling to new places and have lived in 3 countries. And Jayashree says, I'm a parent of a differently abled young adult and a banker turned special educator trained as a curative teacher in Steiner philosophy. And they are going to work on the self-care aspect that Varsha talked about. So welcome to all the change facilitators, and over to you.
Is presenting, she is not made for.
Teja, you're muted. Sorry. You're talking on self-care today. Hi, I'm Tejal.
And I'm Archana. We're mothers to children who are now young adults, but still need our substantial support. Because they learn differently, think differently, and express differently. Sometimes even behave differently. But Tej and I, unfortunately, do not and did not think, learn, or behave differently. Different, that is, from the so-called normal of our world. Being parents to our lovelies is something we do 48 hours a day. Yes, that's how long the day seems sometimes. Because it's so easy to go on and on working and doing things with them or for them that at some point you realize that there is no you left. The brain moves from the present, which involves scheduling the day, planning activities, schoolwork, therapy goals, to the future, which involves the biggest worry. After me, who will be there for him? Thoughts also go back to the many times of the past, which brings with it all things ugly, like guilt, blame, and the what ifs. It takes up mind space and head space like you can't imagine. Even if you're alone, the mind is racing and swirling with what you have to do next.
Now, can you imagine the state of this parent? All of the chaos above and along with it, a good dose of everything else that we go through in our everyday regular life. Am I good enough? Have I done enough? Am I doing enough for my husband? What about my other child? Etc., etc. The caretaker of this vulnerable child is in need of care and nurturing herself. If not every day, at least from time to time. The self that is responsible for the well-being of so many people, that self needs to be present wholly and fully with a soul that has been nourished and taken care of, because your most valuable parenting skill is learning to manage yourself first. This is where self-care comes in. Self-care encompasses all the things that you need to do to remain healthy, reduce stress, and feel as mentally well as possible. So join us for the next 4 months, where it'll be all about you as we discover the difference between self-care and self-indulgence. Also, how self-care can enrich you as a person and as a parent. Learn about engaging self-care activities that help you improve your well-being one day at a time. We look forward to discuss various facets of self-care over the next 4 months.
Thank you. And we now invite Sheetal and Ujjwal to present the next topic, that is collaboration.
Thank you, Archana. I'm just going to share my screen so that we can continue. Just give me a moment. Under this topic of parent-school partnership, we are going to talk about collaboration. But before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Ujjwal and I work as a counselor at Gateway. Along with me, I have Sheetal. Sheetal, would you introduce yourself? Sheetal, you are on mute.
Okay, I'm allowed to unmute now. Hi, I'm Sheetal. I'm mom to a 15-year-old on the autism spectrum. So as parents of special needs children, we're often overwhelmed with thoughts like, how do I help my child be independent in his daily living skills? Do I even understand the emotional upheaval he goes through as a result of his challenges? How do I empower him to find his space in society? Will he be financially independent? And how do I support him now to ensure that it happens? And we often hit the wall not knowing how to achieve all of this alone. It's in moments like these that we seek collaboration to come up with unique and well thought out strategies to support the child reach his own optimum potential.
Because alone we can do so little and together we can do so much. After all, it does take a village to raise a differently able child. Under this topic of collaboration between schools, parents, and extended communities, we would be talking about different ways of communication and sharing different ideas, strategies, while we actively come together as a team to shape the life of the child.
We plan to decode collaboration with parent-teacher collaboration, where we come together as a team and we share a vision for the child's success in academics, functional, and vocational skills. Next is community collaboration, which gives us an opportunity to extend the school curriculum beyond the protective walls of school and gives us a realistic window to build on the child's ability to navigate the real world.
Next is social emotional learning. It is one of the strongest pillars we have. It helps us in building emotional awareness in the child, and the child also learns how to build healthy and meaningful social connections. Teamwork makes the dream work. Class teachers, support staff, the academic and non-academic teachers, along with therapists who work across different sections, all come together to create a conducive environment for the child to learn. Please join us together so that we can understand various support structures and strategies it takes to build a child's future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Next,
you.
I'm going to introduce Manda and Anaita so that they can take their topic forward. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, I'm Manda and I work at the Gateway School of Mumbai. Before we begin, we're going to play a small icebreaker. So if you agree with any of the questions that we're going to ask you, please show us a thumbs up. If you could all turn on your camera and just show us a thumbs up, or even use the emoji button on your screens, that would be great. So the first question is, have you ever felt lighter after a sharing session with your friends? Have you ever gained confidence in your decision after listening to different perspectives? Have you ever wished that you truly had a village to raise your special needs child? If any of these questions ring true to you, come to our session on how to build a support system. The support system may look different for each of your children, for each of your families, but what will look the same is that the child will always be at the center. I'm going to now ask Anaita to share a little bit more about the support system.
Hi, I'm Anaita. I'm a parent of a neurodiverse child at Gateway School. What is a support system? A support system is a group of individuals who are in your corner to be your cheerleader, help with problem solving, provide perspective, be a listening ear, and show empathy without judging. Why do we need a support system? it does really take a village to raise a child. 2 heads are better than one. And in my own experience, I know that it is the circle of support that helps make the right decision. Accept and do the best possible that you can for your family and the child. Amanda, you're on mute.
Come join us as we discuss over the next few months about the different levels of the support system. The first one being working through isolation with family. The second one, developing acceptance with newfound support. And the third one, formation and advocation of strong relationships. And all this while keeping the child at the center of the circle. Thank you. We'll now pass it on to Daya and Jayashree.
I am Daya and I'm a counselor at the Gateway School of Mumbai. So under the topic of parent-school partnership, we're going to be talking today about the role that communication plays in the special needs area. My name again is Daya and I work at Gateway as a counselor. And with me, I have Jayashree, who's a parent. Jayashree, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi.
I'll now pass it on to Jayashree, who will talk to you a little bit more about communication.
Taking from Varsha's talk just now, we will be taking you on a journey that is called communication over the next 4 months. You can sign up for this outward journey. It starts from self, and then the communication with what kind of a child did I have? What is the reason this happened and all the guilt? This is the journey which is a parent holding for herself. Then it moves to the next, to the partner, and then the immediate caregiving family. How do we decide the journey forward? What are we going to take forward? And so the journey moves on till we reach the outside world, till the child keeps growing in this journey. So the first stage, you can just move it to the next slide there. So the first stage is the inward journey, which is very personal and emotional communication system, which is about self with the immediate doctors and the partner, and also the immediate caregivers to see whether they're all on the same page, the changes that the family needs to do, the impact on the work and work lifestyle and the habits of the family. And in stage 2, we will be taking you onward to a slightly outer journey where you move beyond the family. This is the time when the child is ready to step into the outside world for schooling, for learning something more, for getting into the society. This is also, again, an emotional journey, and it also has some amount of technicality involved. So you need to start involving the therapist, the school. You want to start deciding whether it's inclusive, whether it's academic or non-academic, whether it's life skill based, and also setting expectations with the people who are going to teach your child something, whether it be the school or the centers, and also trying to communicate effectively to see that what has been promised and what you are expecting and what they can give has all been on the same page, and whether delivery is happening, the IEP sessions, and more importantly, the parent-to-parent conversations, because this parent support group is what carries you through, and this I can swear by with my own journey. And then we move on to the next, where the child becomes a young adult, and it is setting out of the cocoon of this protection of school and home. And here it's again an emotional journey for the parent to let go of this child and see what the world has to offer. And this also has some technical suggestions and researches that needs to be done as to the needs of the child. So this is about looking into integration into the society, the advocacy that needs, and believe me, there's a lot of advocacy that needs to go in with the way the currently the situation is. So this is where we have to start setting up this little community of our own, where in future we hope we leave behind a legacy where we do not have to advocate so much for these little kids of ours.
So the reason we'll be talking about communication is because one of the biggest problems that we've seen is people assume communication has already been achieved and that leads to a lot of miscommunication most of the time. The methodology we'll be using case studies, and we would require the participants to do some pre-work in order to bring in personal experiences for discussion. So please do join us if you'd like to know more about this journey of communication, and we'll be more than happy to work with you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, and it has indeed been a wonderful session, and right from Varsha and all the change facilitators who helped us understand what is it that is required by parents to be able to tread on this journey, and at the same time how difficult it can get for parents. And with this, now what I would like to do is if we can take up some questions which Varsha or the change facilitators can answer. So allow me to put forward the first question that has come up, which says that treatment for neurodiverse children is expensive and time consuming. How do economically underprivileged parents manage this?
It's a really good question, Rakhi, and we hear this very, very often that first, raising a child is expensive, and then raising a child with difficulties, like I shared, is just a whole different journey. There are lots of foundations and there are lots of organizations as well that support with scholarships, with maybe lesser pricing, with different, a lot of them are funded, like Ummeed is funded. There are lots of centers that are also funded that are able to support people who come from a lower socioeconomic status, and they're able to support them in the best possible way. There are lots of therapists who also, there are lots of educators. I know I do 2 pro bono cases every week, every month. So a lot of people I know also do take on cases and are able to support that at a base that they're able to with a pro bono price. Sometimes also what happens is a lot of organizations also offer support. Like our school, we have around 95 kids and we have around 12, 13 on them that 12, 13 of them who are a part of the need-based scholarship. So I think there is enough. It is expensive. There should be a lot more support. There should be a lot more people helping people from different low socioeconomic status as well. But there are people now who are aware. There are some government fundings as well that are different for different cities, but that might sometimes reach out to people. Sometimes it does not really help and support a lot of people. But right now the awareness is a lot more. But it is a real life problem that we are still facing in a bigger picture as well. So if I get a case, sometimes I refer them to someone else. I said, this family needs support. Can you take it on? So sometimes people do this, but it's still done on a case by case basis.
Right, right. Thank you so much for taking that question, Varsha. I think even there are certain government organizations which are also providing therapy sessions at a very reasonable cost.
All your government hospitals as well now have also started doing that. So there is in Bombay, there's your Nair, Science, KEM. They all are also able to support you. And most organizations, I worked at Rishti earlier. I know there's MDA, I know there's Ummeed. There are lots of centers where people, if you can show, because what also happens is sometimes people can afford and they don't pay. And therapists also they are also people who have got an education degree and this is their work. So sometimes you want to draw a line with that, but I do know a lot of government organizations that also support.
Yeah. Great, thank you. With this, we would like to go to our next question. And that's something that we often hear as special educators, that what can I do if my partner rejects our child? So I think that revolves around acceptance. And acceptance is something that, we see a lot of parents struggling with. So how do we address this?
I'll let one of the parents address this actually. Anaita, Archana, Tejal, Sheetal, any of you all would like to talk a little bit more about this and share a little bit more? Jayashri? Jayashri, I can see you unmuting yourself. So would you like to go? You can go.
Yeah. So that's something I think as parents, we struggle initially a lot about acceptance. So as I said, that's the first step No, it's not. I don't think we still have completely accepted, because at every stage you keep thinking it'll be better and you'll reach something, because there's a norm around you which you're always connecting with. So it is not easy to cut away the norm and say that I've accepted this child and it's fine. We've accepted, we love our children, but there's always this constant world which keeps penetrating us with, oh, he can do much more, can't he do this? So then we can start questioning ourselves. So acceptance, I think, has a lot of stages. I don't think anybody completely accepts at one go and say, okay, this is it and I'm done and I'm going with it. But I believe because we accepted stages, we also keep pushing ourselves to keep looking at the strengths of a child in a different way each time, because we are challenging ourselves too when we look at the different things that keep popping up at every stage. So full acceptance, I don't know. If there's some parent who's done that, I would really love to chat with them and come to that level of contentedness, because I don't think even in other kids, even my other regular typical kid, I haven't accepted and been content with him. So I think it's a journey like that.
Yeah, well said, Jayashree, because even with children with neurotypical symptoms, we tend to struggle, and there's that constant pressure on us parents to compare them to the norms, as you said. And I also feel that, there's a lot of societal pressure out here. It's the questions that haunt parents are, some of the questions are like, what after me? Who takes care of the child after me? That's something that really haunts parents, and that can actually give sleepless nights.
Yeah.
So this is something, acceptance, as you rightly said, full acceptance is something which is really difficult to have. But the acceptance of the fact that your child needs to be addressed in a particular manner, I think that makes it easy for the parent to go along with the child and fulfill the child's need. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking that question, Jayashree. And with this, we have our next question, which says, my husband's family says that being only SSC pass, I have produced a defective child. Oh, how can I help them understand that the fault is not mine? Nobody.
Okay, I'll start answering this, Rakhi, and then maybe I'll ask another parent to also share. Parents, you can just add your name there, the ones who are the change facilitators, and you can take this forward. So, Rakhi, it's a very true question, and this is actually a question that's asked very, very often. Is it my fault? Very often, people feel like it's one of the parents' fault that something like that has happened. So for this parent, I would say two things. First thing is, you believe and you understand and you educate yourself to know that this wasn't your fault. The second thing that you can work towards is to educate them in the best of your capacity. Also allow experts to enter your house. I have been doing this for a while. And that's something that I've also learned, and I've understood that sometimes when you, as a person who's got a little bit more expertise in this field, talk to the family, they hear it very differently. So have educators come to your house, have therapists come to your house, you go and meet them, let them have a one-on-one. So they really realize that this is not something that they could go ahead and, it's not anybody's fault. And one of our parents from our school has written that sometimes people who share this can be idiots. I'm not going ahead and discussing that, but I think sometimes people just feel like I said, they want to put the blame on someone. So that's something that they go ahead and they share. And that's what they would like to do. But it's really not anyone's fault. So do that. Have experts speak. It's the same thing like with COVID, we feel like anyone and everyone is spreading it, but there is a lot of science and a lot of research, and there's a lot of understanding about when does it spread and what can you do to prevent it and what can you do in your capacity. But any other parent who would like to share, anyone from the change facilitators? Tejal, Sheetal, Anaita, Jayashree again, Archana. Tejal, you want to share?
So I agree with what Varsha said, is that initially it is very important that the parent educates oneself, because automatically when you know where it's coming from, you talk with a different confidence, with a different, you're able to answer questions and you're able to understand what's happening to the child also. And like Varsha said, and because we've lived that through, that if it is necessary, you bring an expert to talk. And others, very importantly, others will start viewing your child the way you view your child. So first, if you are you are educated to understand what is the area of difficulty, and once you start helping the child, giving that support which the child needs, others also start to understand. But
yeah, to add to Tejal's, it's like, I think the family also feeds off how you portray your child, and the confidence, or you have the confidence you have in yourself and the child. So it's very, I mean, in the beginning, it'll always seem like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but the more you educate yourself, and I think you have to even advocate in the family sometimes, especially if you're living in a joint family, you have to advocate for your child in many ways. So it's how you are portraying your child. So you have to initially first accept, the acceptance comes from you first, and then you take it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, while working with the children from the low economic strata, I found that, the parents really need a lot of counseling. And because that's where the blame emerges, right? And, the husband blames the wife blames the husband, and there's a lot of friction, between them. And then already dealing with the child with special needs can really, kind of put you in that stress zone. So there's a lot of counseling that is required. So do schools also offer counseling? Do government organizations offer counseling to parents, or does that also come at a cost?
So a lot of organizations do offer free counseling. Like I said, there are lots of government aided organizations that do that. Even a lot of private counselors do take on pro bono cases as well. And there are people who are happy to educate, go ahead, even parents talking to other parents. Rakhi, that's something that I would like to stress on. Very often you feel like you need to speak to an expert in the field. But very often when someone comes to me, of course, I would be the first person to speak to them because that's the norm. But I very often connect them to another parent. And I say, speak to this other parent, they will support you as well. Because their journey is very different as well.
I think the community support matters out here as well, because the more you speak, the more you know, right? And of course, the most haunted question, that what after me? So how do we address this amongst the parents? Any parent who would
I'll
like to
let
take this?
one of the parent who would answer this as well.
I think I can answer this one. I'll try. Is that like I have a child who's a single child. I mean, he does not have any siblings, so it's a question that does haunt me. While I have set up a trust for him. So which it would be a professional trust where I would have professionals be the trustees. I would have extended families be trustees to handle this. And at the same time, I'm looking for a residential setup, or to be part to set up a residential setup, which looks after children like this, which is a nice, happy place for them to spend their life, gives them opportunity to learn, to follow their passions, and maybe some amount of employment and vocation skills. So that seems to be the path right now at present in India. Though maybe once we do move towards larger setups like the way they are there in the West, and where the government really supports, we too may open up.
Yeah, I think that's what makes you all powerful parents, right? Being parents of children with special needs, I feel that the parents are inherited with supreme power to be able to come up and contribute towards the community, to take care of the larger cause. So and when the community comes together, of course magic happens. And with this I would like to ask the last question that's put up. Will a child who's in an inclusive school setup be pressurized by way of remarks, peer pressure, and remarks that they may not tell you about? Okay, it's not very clear. Will a child in an inclusive school suffer peer pressure and subtle deprecating remarks that they may not tell you about?
I'm going to let Anaita answer this question, Rakhi, because she had unmuted herself before and she has two kids. So Anaita, would you like to answer this?
Well, yeah, okay. Thank you, Varsha. I think special needs children say a lot less than even typical children. So typical children don't always tell you, and then special needs children tell you even less. So I think in my experience in schools like Gateway, we don't face this all the time, but there are yet children who have needs and are yet insensitive to other children who have needs, and it could happen. But I think if the teachers and parents work together and collaborate and understand and don't blame each other or fight, I think these things can be easily ironed out. And in school, we've had tiny situations like this, which are very easily, worked on. And actually, the children do learn to then accept the others, and they learn to go through this. It's just like a normal school, but it's a little more complicated because you have children with different needs in a same class. I think Varsha also.
Thank you, Anita. That's beautifully answered. To just add to what Anita is sharing as well, Lucky, very often I hear this a lot from kids who are in mainstream schools or inclusive settings. And like I spoke about the community part, I think kids can sometimes be very mean to other kids. But if they know and if they understand, I've very often seen kids being very helpful to other kids as well. It's just sometimes they don't know. And the minute you educate them and you support them, a lot of them really go out of their way to do. And a lot of what Anita just shared.
Absolutely. I think empathy skills, play an important role. Communication and empathy is what is required. And once we set the ground rules and we educate them, they're more than happy to help each other out. And in fact, this reminds me that way back when I used to run inclusive camps, there used to be parents from the mainstream child who would come and tell us that, my child is imitating the behaviors of the child with special needs. So, how do we tackle that? And, why are you taking children from both, from special needs as well as regular needs? Why can't you do a camp? And the whole purpose was to let children get exposed, because if they are not going to get exposed and they are not going to come across children with special needs, how are they going to accept them in the society when they're going to be a part of? Because you never know, they may land up working together. So it's not about
sensitizing them is the
sensitizing
most
them,
important thing. Yeah, and I think that's just how it grows, right? And then parents and then people, like I said, it has to be everyone. Everyone has to play a role to be a lot more inclusive. But
Absolutely. Parent
great
teacher
question.
collaboration. Yeah. Parent teacher collaboration goes a long way in sensitizing and spreading awareness. And with this, I would like to invite Dr. Kumi, who is the Karta Dharta of this entire summit, to come up and, to come up and thank Ms. Varsha and proceed with the vote of thanks.
What can I say? Bravo. Amazing. This has been an amazing session. Head and heart. Everything that you've said is so informative, so touching, so meaningful. When I first invited Varsha, I thought I would have one expert and 8 supporters. Today I see I have 9 experts. With all due respect to you, Varsha, I see we have 9 experts.
I completely agree with you, Kumi.
Thank you very much for having brought in this team of amazing ladies. Thank you very, very much. It's been a wonderful session. My special thanks go out to you. You have worked very hard over several months to plan and manage this session so beautifully. My thanks go out to each and every facilitator here: Tejal, Archana, Ujjwal, Sheetal, Manda, Anita, Daya, and Jayashri. Special thanks also to Raki for having anchored the session so beautifully. This is a very, very powerful project. And if you choose to sign up as action group members, as I said earlier, you will be working with experts, people who really understand differently abled children. So I would encourage our audience to sign up. Go to our website, www.ggps4change.org, and start filling in the Google Forms. I would also like to inform you of one more thing. We have had participants at this summit from various parts of India and other countries as well. You too can take part in this program, in the training, because the training is going to be largely online. Next week, we invite you once again for some very important sessions. We have Mr. Jim Lee Tekwi from Singapore, who is going to talk about cyber wellness and how we can continue valuing relationships and maintaining relationships in cyberspace. This particular session is going to be anchored by Amrita Langs. On the next day, which is a Sunday, we have Mr. Shraddhalu Ranade, a leading scientist from the Aurobindo Ashram, talk about integral parenting. And as some of us would know, it was Aurobindo, like Montessori and several others, who insisted that the child is spirit first, matter next. This is going to be a very interesting session followed by our special guest speaker, Father Godfrey Deesa, who's going to talk about anxiety and depression during COVID and after COVID, and how do we deal with it. Astroscientist from the US, Mr. Mayor Amalsad, is going to be the anchor for this Sunday's session. The link is the same, the one you used to get on today. It's common throughout the entire summit, but if you have any doubts, you can go to our website, www.ggpsforchange.org. Don't wait for the link to be received by you. And importantly, if you've missed any of the sessions, you can go to the past events section of our website and view all of them. So we do hope that you like, follow, and share us on your media handles. And take care, be safe, and God bless. Bye-bye.